My name is Amanda. I'm 38 years old. I'm married to a man named Michael. Michael is 42 years old. We have been married for 10 years. Our life was simple, but it was good. We lived in a small apartment in the city. It was not a big place, but it was comfortable. The apartment had a small kitchen, a living room, and one bedroom. From the window, we could see the street and a small park across the road. Michael worked at a logistics company near the airport. His job was often stressful. Many trucks came and went every day. There were many schedules and many problems to solve. But Michael always said the same thing. I do this for our future. I worked during the day at a medical office. My job was to help patients when they arrived. I checked their names, answered questions, and helped them fill out forms. Sometimes the office was very busy. Sometimes it was quiet. But I liked my work because I enjoyed helping people. Our days followed the same simple routine. In the morning, we woke up early. Michael usually made coffee while I prepared a small breakfast. Sometimes we ate toast with eggs. Sometimes we only drank coffee because we were in a hurry. Then we went to work. In the evening, we came home, cooked dinner together, and talked about our day. Michael was the kind of husband who told me everything. If something good happened at work, he told me the story. If something went wrong, he told me that too. That was always our rule. No secrets. We believed that honesty made a marriage strong. We trusted each other completely. At least, that was what I believed. But 3 weeks ago, something started to change. At first, the change was small. Michael began coming home later than usual. Normally, he arrived home around 6 in the evening, but now he sometimes came home at 7 or even 8. The first time it happened, I did not think much about it. Work must be busy, I told myself. Michael looked tired that night. His shoulders were heavy and his eyes looked distant. I asked him, "Long day at work?" He nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "very long." Then he went to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. He did not say much during dinner. That was unusual. Michael normally liked to talk during meals. He liked telling stories about the trucks, the drivers, and the strange problems that happened at the warehouse. But that night, he was quiet. Still, I tried not to worry. Everyone has stressful days. A few days later, something else happened. We were sitting at the table eating dinner. The room was warm, and the soft sound of traffic came through the window. Suddenly, Michael's phone rang. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Michael looked down at his phone. His eyes stayed on the screen for a moment. Then something strange happened. He stood up quickly and walked into the other room to answer the call. I sat at the table alone, holding my fork in my hand. That felt strange. Michael had never done that before. Normally, he answered calls right in front of me. Sometimes he even put the phone on speaker and laughed about work problems. But this time, he closed the door. I could hear his voice from the other room, but the words were too quiet to understand. After a few minutes, he came back. He sat down and picked up his fork again. I looked at him and asked a simple question. "Who was that?" Michael shrugged. "Just someone from work," he said. His answer sounded normal, but something in his voice felt different. It felt careful, like he was choosing his words very slowly. I watched him for a moment, but I said nothing more. Maybe I was imagining things. Sometimes our minds create problems that are not real. But inside my chest, I felt something heavy. Over the next week, the strange feeling grew. Michael still came home late. Sometimes he looked distracted, like his mind was far away. One evening, I asked him a question, but he did not answer. "Amanda?" I said. He looked at me suddenly, like he had just returned from a long trip inside his thoughts. "Oh, sorry," he said. "What did you say?" I repeated the question, but my heart felt uneasy. Where was his mind going? What was he thinking about? The feeling stayed with me for many days. Finally, one afternoon after work, I decided to visit my friend Ellen. Ellen lived in the apartment next to ours. She had lived in this building for many years. She knew almost everyone who lived here. She was kind, wise, and a little older than me. Whenever I had a problem, Ellen listened patiently. So that afternoon, I walked down the hallway and knocked on her door. A few seconds later, the door opened. Ellen smiled warmly when she saw me. "Amanda," she said, "come in." Her apartment smelled like fresh tea. The room was cozy and full of warm light from the kitchen window. We sat together at the small table in her kitchen. Ellen poured 2 cups of tea and pushed 1 cup toward me. Then she looked carefully at my face. She knew me well. After a moment, she said gently, "Amanda, what's wrong?" I quickly tried to smile. "Nothing," I said. But Ellen raised one eyebrow. "You forget something," she said. "What?" I asked. Ellen leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "I have known you for 3 years," she said. "When something is wrong, I can see it on your face." For a moment, I stayed silent. Then I sighed softly. Maybe it was time to talk. So I told her everything. I told her about Michael coming home late. I told her about the strange phone call during dinner. I told her how he sometimes looked far away, like his mind was somewhere else. Ellen listened quietly. She did not interrupt me. She simply nodded from time to time while I spoke. When I finished, the room became very quiet. Ellen held her cup of tea and looked down at the table for a moment. Then she spoke slowly. "Sometimes people carry problems alone," she said, "not because they want to hurt us." She paused. "Sometimes they do it because they think they are protecting us." Her words stayed in my mind. Protecting me? Maybe she was right. Maybe Michael was dealing with something difficult at work. Maybe he did not want to worry me. I finished my tea and thanked Ellen for listening. Then I went back to my apartment. That evening, the sun was already going down when Michael came home. But something about him looked different. He was not just tired. He looked nervous. Very nervous. He put his keys on the table and avoided looking at me. For a moment, we stood in silence in the living room. Then Michael said something that surprised me. "Amanda," he said slowly, "have you ever thought about moving?" I blinked in confusion. "Moving?" I asked. "Moving where?" Michael rubbed the back of his neck and looked toward the window. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe another city." He paused again. "Maybe somewhere closer to the coast." My heart beat a little faster. We had never talked about moving before. Our jobs were here. Our life was here. So why was he suddenly asking this question? I looked directly into his eyes. "Michael," I said quietly, "what is going on?" Michael opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. And in that silent moment, I felt it clearly. Something big was about to change. Michael did not answer my question. He stood near the window and looked outside. The evening light was fading, and the street below was becoming darker. I waited. Finally, he shook his head slowly. "It's nothing," he said, but his voice did not sound normal. It sounded tense. I looked at him carefully. For 10 years, I had known Michael very well. I could usually understand his feelings just by looking at his face. And right now, his face showed something unusual. Fear. Not the kind of fear people feel when something dangerous happens. It was a quiet fear, a hidden fear. Something was clearly wrong, but Michael did not want to talk about it, so I did not push him. "Okay," I said softly. We ate dinner together, but the room felt quiet and heavy. The television was on, but neither of us watched it. Michael looked at his phone several times during dinner. Each time the phone vibrated, he quickly picked it up and checked the screen. I noticed everything, but I said nothing. Later that night, Michael went to take a shower. I stayed in the kitchen and cleaned the dishes. The apartment was quiet, except for the sound of running water from the bathroom. Then suddenly, I heard a soft vibration. Bzzz. I turned my head. Michael's phone was on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up for a moment. I was not planning to look at it. I truly was not. Michael's phone was his private thing. I respected that. But the bright screen caught my eye. And for a brief moment, I saw a message notification. Only a few words were visible, but those words made my heart stop. The message said, "Did you tell her yet?" My chest felt tight. "Tell me what?" I stood there staring at the phone. My mind began to race with questions. Who sent this message? What secret were they talking about? And why had Michael not told me? The sound of the shower stopped. I quickly looked away from the phone. I tried to act normal. A minute later, Michael walked into the kitchen. His hair was still wet, and he wore a clean t-shirt. He smiled slightly. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said quickly. But my voice felt strange. My heart was beating faster than usual. Michael picked up his phone and looked at the screen. For a moment, his face changed. The small smile disappeared. Then he locked the phone and put it in his pocket. We walked into the living room and sat on the sofa. The television was still playing, but I could not focus on it. The words from the message repeated again and again in my mind. "Did you tell her yet?" Finally, I could not keep quiet anymore. I turned toward Michael. "Michael," I said slowly. He looked at me. "Yes?" I took a deep breath. "I think it is time you tell me the truth." Michael froze. For a moment, he did not move at all. Then he looked confused. "The truth?" he asked. "About what?" I looked directly at him. "About the message." His eyes widened slightly. "You saw my phone?" he asked. "I saw the notification," I replied. It said, "Did you tell her yet?" The room became very quiet. Michael looked down at his hands. He seemed both worried and a little angry. After a moment, he stood up and walked across the room. Then he sat down again, on the other end of the sofa. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I broke the silence. "Michael," I said gently, "are you hiding something from me? You can tell me the truth." Michael rubbed his face with both hands. Then he sighed deeply. "Amanda," he said quietly, "it's not what you think." My eyebrows lifted. "Then explain it," I said. He stayed silent again. The tension in the room grew stronger. Finally, Michael spoke again. "Amanda," he said slowly, "I already made my choice." My heart began to beat very fast. "Your choice?" I asked. "What choice?" Michael looked at the floor. Then he said something that confused me. "Do you remember when my company started having problems last month?" I nodded. "Yes," I said. "You told me something about budget cuts." Michael nodded too. "Yes," he said, "but things became worse." He paused. "Much worse." I felt nervous. "What do you mean?" I asked. Michael took a deep breath. My department is closing, he said. For a moment, I did not understand his words. Closing? I repeated. Michael nodded slowly. Yes, he said. I'm losing my job. The words hit me like cold water. You're serious? I asked. Yes, Michael said quietly. I leaned back against the sofa. My mind tried to understand everything. Michael was losing his job. But another question was still in my mind. The message, I said. The one that said, "Did you tell her yet?" Michael nodded. That was my manager, he explained. He knows I have been trying to tell you. I blinked. Trying to tell me. Michael continued speaking. There is another position in the company, he said, but it is not here. I felt my stomach tighten. Where is it? I asked. Michael looked up at me. In another city. The room suddenly felt very quiet. A different city? I said slowly. Michael nodded again. Yes. He hesitated for a moment. Then he said the words that shocked me the most. I accepted the job. I stared at him. You accepted it? I asked. Michael nodded. Yes, he said softly. I know I should have talked to you first. He looked down again, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? I asked. Afraid that you would say no, he replied. My heart was still racing. So many emotions filled my mind at once. Surprise, confusion, a little anger. Michael continued speaking. Amanda, I did it for us, he said. I did not want us to lose everything. I sat quietly on the sofa. My thoughts were moving quickly. Michael had been carrying this secret for weeks. He had been facing a huge problem alone. And now everything was about to change. Our home, our city, our life. But one important question still remained. I looked at Michael carefully. When do we have to move? I asked. Michael looked up at me with surprise. You're not angry? He asked. I did not answer immediately, because the truth was complicated. Part of me was angry, but another part of me understood something important. And that understanding was beginning to grow inside my heart. Michael looked at me with wide eyes. You're not angry? He asked again. For a moment, I did not answer. My mind was still full of thoughts. Everything had changed so quickly. 3 weeks ago, our life felt simple and calm. Now, I was hearing that Michael had lost his job. We might move to another city. Everything felt uncertain. Part of me felt upset. Michael had made a big decision without asking me first. In our marriage, we always believed in making decisions together. But another part of me saw something else. I saw the worry in his face. I saw the stress he had carried for many days. Maybe even many nights. Michael was not trying to hurt me. He was trying to protect our future. I took a slow breath. Yes, I said finally. I'm a little angry. Michael looked down. I understand, he said quietly. But I also understand something else, I continued. Michael looked up again. What? He asked. I moved a little closer to him on the sofa. You were afraid, I said. Yes, he admitted. You thought you had to solve this problem alone. Michael nodded slowly. I didn't want you to worry, he said. I wanted to fix everything first. I shook my head gently. Michael, that's not how a marriage works. He listened carefully. We are a team, I said. When one person has a problem, both people face it together. Michael stayed silent for a moment. Then he nodded. You're right, he said. I should have told you earlier. The room felt quieter now. The heavy tension between us was slowly disappearing. Michael leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. I was really scared, he said. Every day at work, things became worse. People were losing their jobs. Everyone was worried. He paused and rubbed his hands together. When my manager told me my department would close, I felt like the ground disappeared under my feet. I listened carefully. Michael continued. He told me there was another job in the company, but it was in another city. I nodded. That's why you asked me about moving, I said. Yes, Michael replied. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know what you would say. He looked at me with nervous eyes. I thought maybe you loved this city too much. Maybe you would not want to leave. I thought about that. Our apartment, our neighborhood, my job, my friend Ellen next door, all those things were important to me. But something else was even more important. My husband, our future together. I reached out and held Michael's hand. Michael, I said softly. Yes, he replied. Where is the new city? Michael looked surprised again. You really want to know? He asked. Yes, I said with a small smile. He took a breath. It's a coastal city, he said. Not too big. The office there manages shipping from the port. I imagined a city near the ocean, waves, boats, a fresh start. When would we move? I asked. Michael hesitated. Probably in about 2 months, he said. That's when the new position begins. 2 months. It sounded fast, but maybe it was also a good opportunity, a new place, a new adventure. I looked around our small living room. The same sofa, the same table, the same pictures on the wall. For 10 years, this place had been our home. But maybe home was not just a place. Maybe home was the person sitting next to me. I squeezed Michael's hand gently. We can do this, I said. Michael looked at me carefully. You mean, you want to move with me? I smiled. Of course, I said. His shoulders relaxed immediately. A look of relief appeared on his face. You have no idea how worried I was, he said. I thought you would be very angry. I was a little angry, I admitted. Michael laughed softly. I deserve that, he said. But next time, I continued, we make big decisions together. Michael nodded quickly. Yes, he said, together. Then he pulled me into a warm hug. For a moment, we stayed like that, sitting quietly in the living room. Outside, the city lights were shining through the window. Our life was about to change. A new city, a new job, a new home. But now something felt different. Now we were facing the future as a team again, and that made everything feel possible. Later that night, we began talking about our plans. We discussed my job and how I could find new work in the new city. We talked about apartments near the ocean. Michael even showed me photos of the harbor on his phone. The water looked blue and peaceful. Maybe this change would not be so scary after all. Sometimes life surprises us. Sometimes problems appear when we least expect them. But those problems can also lead us to new opportunities. And sometimes they remind us of something very important. We are stronger when we face life together. That night, before going to sleep, Michael held my hand. Thank you, he said quietly, for trusting me. I smiled in the dark room. We promised, I said. No secrets. Michael laughed softly. Yes, he said. No secrets. And for the first time in many weeks, the worry in his voice was gone. A new chapter of our life was beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story and want to improve your English through simple and emotional stories, please support my YouTube channel. Listen and learn English. On this channel, you can practice English listening, easy English stories, vocabulary through storytelling, real-life conversations. Please like, comment, and subscribe to listen and learn English so you never miss a new story. And remember, the best way to learn English is to listen, understand, and enjoy the story. See you in the next story.